Just clicked record. So that should pop up. And now I'll let folks in from the waiting room. And I'll let Kim take that until I pass the slides to you. Welcome, everybody. Excited to be in the space here with you today. And while we're waiting for folks to filter in, we invite you to share your name and where you're tuning in from in the chat. And this is a learning exchange with the Roanoke Foodshed Network. We're focusing this month on regenerative food production, healthy soil, ecosystems, and communities. And this is the fourth in our series that's focusing on what's going on in our community and region. I'm going to just start us off with some technical logistics. First, we invite you to use the chat feature for questions and comments. The speakers will share a little bit about their work, and later we'll have opportunities for you all to pose questions, so you can add any questions you have throughout the talk into the chat feature. We also just have a reminder that it's automatically set for everyone's line to remain muted. So again, that chat feature will be the main way to interact with us today. And we recommend viewing the presentation in speaker view just so you can see who's sharing, and you can click speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And I'll be on tech support today. If you're having any difficulties, just contact me, Katie Trazo, in the chat, or email me at ketrazo@vt.edu. Finally, we want to just make folks aware that this session is automatically live captioned. And if you want to access that feature, you can click the More button with the 3 dots, and then there will be a selection for you to click Captions, and then you can choose subtitles or viewing a full transcript, which brings it up kind of like a little side pane, like the chat box. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Mo McGonigal, Director of Regional Partnerships at LEAP, to share a little bit more about the Roanoke Foodshed Network before we get started.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for being here today. I'm just going to do a quick overview introduction to the Roanoke Foodshed Network for those of you that are new to the network. So the Roanoke Foodshed Network was officially formed through a Regional Food System Partnership grant through the USDA in 2020. But the network was really a culmination of over a decade of conversations and collaborations with a core group of stakeholders based in Roanoke, Virginia. So through this planning grant, we've had the opportunity to really build out the foundation for the network. Part of that being our network guiding star, which is an equitable and resilient food and farm system that produces health and abundance in the Roanoke region. So there's a lot of ways to cut and to define a region of a foodshed. So just for a little clarity's sake, this is the way that we're defining our region, looking at the bridging the rural-urban divide and looking at the way food flows from rural communities into the urban center. So we define the urban center as Roanoke City, obviously Salem City, Roanoke County, but really most of the food in our foodshed, our regional foodshed, is being produced in the rural communities. So we're including the Craig, Botetourt, Bedford, Franklin, Floyd, and Montgomery. So there are numerous partners. The beauty of this network is it's built on a foundation of collaboration. So while LEAP is serving as the fiscal agent for the grant, it is truly a collaborative of the community with a lot of the key partners at top serving in leadership roles, but tons and tons of community-based organizations and individuals that really make the work that we're doing possible. So as we've kind of come together through this planning grant, our our main goal, our short-term goal that we're working toward, is to mobilize an expansive network to create a collaborative, action-oriented framework to prioritize food and farming systems. Next slide. So as we've come together, we've really oriented around ourselves around 4 main goals. So the first being focused on food access, the second being on developing a regional food identity, the third goal on farming and food production, and then the fourth goal on creating a trusting and transparent network. So each of these goals, next slide, forms a working group has formed around each one of these 4 different goals, with 2 co-leads for each working group that then make up the leadership team. So just a little bit about the structure. So the working groups are really the space where a lot of the active parts of the network happen, through hosting events, through defining community priorities, that type of stuff. And then it's all brought into the leadership team so that we can have a cohesive cross-sector collaboration where all working groups kind of know what's happening across the different working groups. Next slide. So today, a core part of this building and developing this network is really learning from each other. So that's what we're here today. So I'll pass it off to Kim Nawolny to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Mo. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad that you're here with us. We have a really robust group from many parts of Virginia and beyond. So it's a great opportunity to be sharing this time with you. I have the privilege to introduce our speakers, part of our network here in the Roanoke Valley. I'm going to go over both. I have 2. Well, one's a collective bio and the other one is a standalone, but I'm going to do those first, and then we're going to turn it over to Anna and Brent and to Adam. So first and foremost, going to introduce Brent and Anna Wills, who have operated Bramble Hollow Farm in the mountains of Bedford County, Virginia, since 2004, and they have used livestock rotations, compost, and other soil building techniques to diversify their pasture-based operation, where they specialize in the production of heritage breeds of pigs and poultry, including farm-hatched heritage birds for laying flocks as well as meat birds. Brent has been involved in restorative agricultural systems and conservation for over 25 years and is the owner of Will's Soil and Stream in Montvale, Virginia, providing ecological land management services for farmers and land managers in the Mid-Atlantic region. Brent also serves as the president on the board of directors for the Virginia Association for Biological Farming, which we just had our conference recently. By doing so, he promotes soil health, resilient farming practices, and the production of nutrient-dense and ecologically friendly food. We're really excited to have both Anna and Brent with us this afternoon. And now I'm going to introduce Adam Taylor. Adam has been the farm manager for over 6 years at the Virginia Tech Catawba Sustainability Center, which is a 377-acre farm located in Catawba Valley, here in the southwest region of Virginia. At the Catawba Sustainability Center, Adam manages rotational grazing and agroforestry systems, as well as an incubator farm and other regenerative agricultural research projects. He's been has extensive experience in agriculture from early on up. Adam has worked as a farm intern for author Barbara Kingsolver and husband Stephen Hopp on their 100+ acre farm in Meadowview, Virginia. Has served 2 years in the Peace Corps as a forestry extension agent, as well as earned his master's in agriculture from Oklahoma State University. For several years, he coordinated the West Virginia's Farmers Market Association and the West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition. Beyond his work, all of that, and more, Adam also co-owns and operates Singing Spring Farm with his partner in Craig County. So with that, I'm really excited for you all to be here today. Thank you, especially as farmers, that you are always on, very little time off, but this is an engaging opportunity to grow our network and engage with people in many parts of our listening audience. So with that, I think Anna and Brent, you're up.
Thanks, Kim. Can you guys hear us okay?
Can hear you great.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. We're having a little technical difficulties as usual. Right as soon as everything starts up. Let me see if we can, our computer, we lost power right as soon as we started the thing, which is what happened. So I'm pulling up our slideshow now. So let's go ahead and see if we can get that going. Can you guys see that?
I think I'll have to go screenshot.
I've got to go back. Well, we're going to go ahead and get, hang on a sec. All right, here we go. No idea what is all this stuff on here.
Okay, now share screen. Right there. I think click that. We'll be up and running.
I don't need to do PowerPoint. Desktop.
Yep, that's
Right.
looking like it's working.
Can you see it now, Katie?
We can see it, and if you click on slideshow, I think, yeah, we'll get the full view, which is
How's
perfect
that?
now. Yeah.
How's
thank-
that? Okay, great. Sorry. See, that 15-minute lesson you gave me on how to do this the other day did no good whatsoever. So sorry about that. Hey, folks, I'm Brent. This is Anna. Kim, thanks for the introduction. We are, as you can see, we're Bramble Hollow Farm in Montvale, which is on the eastern slope of the Blue Ridge Mountains in western Bedford County, kind of halfway between Roanoke and Lynchburg, for those of you who are familiar with the area. And what you see there on the screen is just a quick drone shot of some of the farm buildings and some of the pasture where we raise pastured poultry and eggs, as well as some forest and pastured pork. And one of the things that we'll talk a little bit about more here going forward is we've started doing a breeding program in the last probably 5 or 6 years, where we've been producing heritage breed layers, as well as hatching eggs, and even now day-old chicks. And Anna will talk a little bit about that here in a second. But we've been here almost 20 years. I think this March will actually be 19 years since we purchased the property. And when we bought this place, it was kind of a homestead farm. They'd had a few animals, a few turkeys, a few pigs, kind of backyard thing. And then, we sort of fell backwards into growing chickens early on. We had neighbors and family that were enjoying our chickens so much, they asked us to raise some for them. And that's sort of how it all started. And Bramble Hollow Farm was formed. So over the years, we have grown a little bit in our pasture-based operation. As Kim mentioned, we've really been working on sort of the soil health aspect and learning regenerative practices sort of from the beginning. And I like to tell the story that the main reason that we did that was because I was too cheap to actually do it the way that the experts told me to do it. So we started raising chickens and a few pigs and making composts, and realized that by managing the land that way, we were seeing some pretty crazy benefits that weren't necessarily here before. So you can see in the slide here that we raise poultry on grass, and we do it in several different ways. Some day range, some daily moves. We run a few geese with our flocks for predator control, primarily hawk and eagle, aerial predator control. And we really just try to move the animals and keep it as mobile as possible, utilizing the woods edge and open pasture and sort of a silvo poultry ideas we're toying with the last few years. So really just trying to make our ecosystems explode, and really see the full significance of the natural habitat. So just a few more shots there of the farm. You can see on the right side there, that's our son Jack, who is now in charge of the lay-in operation and has been now for about the last 5 or 6 years. And some of his hens there in the upper left, and then some of the baby chicks in the incubator cabinet there on the bottom left. I'm gonna let Anna talk about the breeding program here in just a second, as well as a few other things. But one of the other things we do here, other than poultry, is pigs and pork. Like I mentioned, we try to do those in the pasture and in the woods as much as we can and keep them moving. We did have cattle here on the farm for about 12 years, and we found that I was spending a lot more time moving cows to fresh grass than we were selling beef. So we decided that's one of those things that it's always hard to do, let something go, so that you can focus on your other priorities. But that's what we've done. So we let the beef go, and we're now focusing on the pork and the poultry and the breeding programs. And as any of you who do any growing or anything at all at home, you know that that's plenty of work to do. So it keeps us hopping. Couple shots of some of the infrastructure here. Kim, am I doing okay on time? Good on time?
You're doing it.
Awesome. The upper left there, you see our poultry processing facility. We do process poultry on farm. The bottom left is a new building here that we're going to talk a little bit more about too. It's going to be a commercial kitchen that's going to be available to some farms that we work with, as well as our community. The middle picture there on the bottom is our brooder, where the baby chicks go after they come out of the incubator, and ones that we do buy from, through the post office and the hatchery system. We brood those in there as well. And then the picture on the right there is specifically for Kim, so she can showing off my cover crop from last year that we use not only as a soil builder in our greenhouse and high tunnel, but we also use it to cut and feed as forage to the animals, in the winter season when there's not as much grass growing. So it's kind of a 3-for-1 kind of deal. We also recently have started providing a lot more outreach and networking type opportunities. Just a couple examples here of some events we've had here on the farm over the last 10 to 12 years, really sort of promoting other growers and other farmers in our area, a lot of whom come up and volunteer with us and help us, give us their love and support on the farm. And it's a great way to really get the word out. Since we're talking about a regional food shed, I mean, this is a really good way, on the ground, looking people in the eye and having a meal with them and showing them what you're doing on your farm is just, there's nothing better. So just a couple other quick things here. You can see obviously some of the shots of the bears. That's one of the predators we have to deal with up here with the chickens. Everybody likes chicken. And you can see the compost operation there kind of on the left, and some wood chips that we use as our main fertility ingredient, both on the pastures as well as in the high tunnel, is compost that we build here, on farm. So I'm going to give it to Anna real quick, and she's going to talk a little bit about the Edible Goose Creek, which is a co-op that we formed a few years ago with some other local farms, and tell you a little bit about that.
Okay, you guys can look at some of these beautiful pictures on the screen while I tell you a little bit about Edible Goose Creek. This is a small cooperative that our farm, along with 2 other farms here in Bedford County, more specifically in the Goose Creek Valley area of Bedford County, started together about 5 years ago. I think we have a couple of our members and collaborators that are watching today. But the 3 of us that got together up the valley were Wingstem Farm, where Lexi Royan and Mark Cohen grow medicinal and edible mushrooms, and GMO and soy-free eggs, along with a lot of value-added products that include their mushrooms, eggs. Lexi also grows an extensive dye garden and grows dye plants for natural dyeing. We joined with Nancy Morelli and Jeff Wood of Goose Creek Gardens. Goose Creek Gardens is a farm here up the valley that they focus mostly on edible and medicinal herbs, as well as cut flowers. And then along with the products that we at Bramble Hollow Farm offered, we came together and said, okay, we're kind of 3 smaller size growers. We like to call ourselves micro growers, and we each have a following for our products. So how can we come together and pool our resources and talk to the same people about our products and other people's products, and hopefully find a market there? So Nancy, Lexi, and I have been working on this for several years, and we developed a CSA program where each farm offers some products up to their own CSA shares, and then also we collaborate on some CSA shares together. And then last year we were fortunate enough to really welcome in some new collaborators, and we joined with a farmer named Hannah Patrick, the Luddite farmer, who coincidentally has a space at the Catawba Sustainability Center that Adam is at today. So we worked with Hannah and Matt and Ruth Rayer at Rayer Farmstead and other non-grower collaborators. So these were some folks that were just really interested in moving the food movement forward, not necessarily as growers or contributors in that aspect, but helping us market and distribute our products. Distribution is a big deal for farmers, whether it is at this point in your life or will be later. Distribution is something that you're going to have to look at. So we came together, we formed this collaborative, Edible Goose Creek, and we offer these CSA farm shares, as well as we've started offering a series of workshops for like-minded people who are interested in knowing how to do some of the self-reliance skills that we like to focus on in our farm lives and our personal lives. And we were able to offer workshops, both online and farm-based workshops, to our Edible Goose Creek members, as well as to the public at large. Okay, and this picture is showing a little bit more about area of the farm that we've started focusing on in the last few years, as Brent said, and that's raising our own on-farm breeders for poultry. We became involved with a group in 2016 and 17 called the Sustainable Poultry Network, and their mission was just to really, go to farmers and say, hey, look, we know you're going to these big hatcheries to buy your chicks every year, and we want to give you an alternative. Maybe there's a way that instead of having to go to these off-farm hatcheries every year and get Cornish cross or Freedom Rangers or whatever birds you're raising for your egg layers, maybe we could reproduce those on small farms and further make regional farm systems work together. So we focused on looking at what heritage breeds we had and how those heritage breeds could be bred differently to focus on different traits. For example, we have a line of New Hampshires that we focus on that we're trying to raise for meat birds. So we're trying to make these birds have larger breast and longer legs, more like some of the conventional meat breeds, the Cornish cross and the Freedom Rangers that are raised only in those large hatcheries. So we're working with different breeds of poultry and different strains within those breeds for different reasons. This past year, we went through the long process of becoming National Poultry Improvement Program certified. That picture up in the top left shows us taking a blood sample that we had to take from every one of our breeders and do a test in the field to check for salmonella, typhoid. Then we also had to submit some samples to be checked for avian influenza. And when those came back negative, we were certified NPIP, certified to ship our chicks and our eggs around the country. And so you can see that's our daughter, Marin there. She's helping me prep those chicks to be shipped. And then that was our first batch that we shipped to Oklahoma. So that was really fun. And what we're trying to do is provide other small farms with a reliable source for local poultry. It's probably really easy to get breeders for pigs and beef around this part of the state, but it's not as easy to find on-farm hatcheries. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do, working with other small farmers to see their needs and what they would like to see in a locally sourced hatchery. So. And that picture of our son gathering eggs there, if you go to your farmer's market and wonder why the price of eggs is what the price of eggs is, that's one reason right there, because even when it's very cold and you have to cover your face and every part of your body to go out, the eggs still have to be collected every day, year round.
Yeah, so that's about it.
Thanks so much, Anna, Brent. That was perfect timing, right on the spot. And we're gonna pass it on over to Adam. Looks good, Adam.
Thank you all. Brent and Anna, that was awesome. It's always so inspiring to talk with you all and see what you're doing and just to get the visual. I think I've been to your place once, but to see all that was amazing. So thanks. But yeah, well, on to Virginia Tech's Catawba Sustainability Center. As y'all mentioned, I'm the manager there. Been here for a while. We do a number of things, but today I'm just going to focus on a couple things that we're doing, maybe 2 or 3. But just to show you here, if I can move my slides. There we go. So their farm, as we said, is 377 acres, and we do a lot of different stuff. We're a pretty large, diversified farm, mostly focused on agroforestry. We've kind of gaining speed here with a beef program, which we'll talk about, but we have incubator gardens. We do some wetland restoration. We do some non-timber forest products, and we have if you've not been to the Catawba Sustainability Center and you just want to walk around, we have a greenway trail. You can see the parking here at the main entrance, and you can follow it up the mountain. And then if you want to go on to McAfee's Knob, you can, or you can loop back. So we're kind of open. If anybody wants to come walk the trail, see the farm, you're always welcome to. So like I said, agroforestry is one of our big things. It's one of the things that I think is doing a lot for regenerative agriculture as far as putting trees on the landscape, trapping carbon, creating more of a agroecology by adding fruits and nuts and habitats for different birds and animals that are all contributing to the system as a whole. But here's a definition that we follow, how we can look at interactions between crops and our livestock. I'm going to start off with riparian zones. Riparian buffers are, I think, becoming larger. More people are understanding them a little bit more as we see more of these cost share grants and more adoption of those. Standard USDA 35 feet off the stream bank, plant some random trees. So we looked at, can we do some other trees and make it more multifunctional? Can the trees actually produce something, serve the wildlife or serve the farm? And here's some of our buffers. We've looked at different types from the fixed width to this one is a variable width buffer. Looks like we got some elderberry and serviceberry and some slippery elm and a few things in there, all things that we can use. Here's another example with some persimmons, some black walnuts, some witch hazel. We're mowing it. The creek is right there. But when I say regenerative, I'd like to show this series of pictures. This is what the farm looked like when the Catawba Sustainability Center first started, and no buffers, no trees or nothing. And you see we have volunteers coming, putting them in. I believe that's Katie Trozo right there, bottom left, as a young master's student. And then the trees keep growing until we have what we see today. So in my mind, that's a perfect idea of how a landscape can be regenerated with the right kind of management and forethought. So what I'm mostly going to talk about is beef, because beef is huge in our region. I would say, I know in the area map that Mo shared at the beginning, I would say most of the land owning in that area that is held by farmers they're doing some kind of beef operation. And I would say mostly a cow-calf operation where they're growing mother cows, they're breeding them, they're having calves, they're weaning them, sending them to a livestock market, they're shipped out west for stocker farms, then they go to feedlots, and then that's the beef you see like in our food system commodity wise. We wanted to take a different approach. A lot of times it's an open graze system. They just have a perimeter fence. They're just letting their cows roam, doing whatever they want. They have some grass during the summer, then they spend a lot of time making hay during that time, and then that hay goes down from November to around April, and then the grasses come up, and that's kind of our continuous graze system. A lot of farmers are letting the cows into the streams for their drinking water, which I'm sure a lot of you know is not ideal, as like cattle are 1,200 plus pound animals that are eroding stream banks. They're pooping and peeing in the water. It's adding fecal coliform. So we want to take a different approach. So a few years back during the COVID days, we were able to get some funding, and we started a partnership with Roanoke County to try to encourage economic development in the rural parts of Roanoke County, which would be cattle. And so what we started doing was, if you're a farmer in the region and you exclude your cattle from your stream, maybe practice some kind of rotation, we have grant funding where we will buy 6-month-old weaned steers off of you at a premium price. So thinking that, hey, if you're doing the environmental thing, then maybe you should get an extra price than what everyone else is getting at the stockyard. And so, yeah, we started looking into grass finishing steers. And so they come to us at 6 months old. We keep them for 18 months in our rotational system, and then we slaughter them. Then we're able to see how our system did. We're judging fat content and overall flavor, taste, all the good stuff. We choose Angus cows, black cows, because for some reason, there's a lot of theories out there about why, but most farmers in our region have Angus cattle. I think the Angus Association, lots of good marketing, wanting the breed to take off. And a lot of people were Herefords before, and now they've moved mostly into Angus. And so I guess part of the Catawba Sustainability Center is not only what are we, our practices are, trying to demonstrate or research, more environmentally sound methods of food production, but we also want to try to mimic other producers in the region as much as possible, just so that, if they see a black cow, I got black cows. Oh, your black cows are working like this. Oh, mine maybe could do the same thing. And so that's why we chose Angus. I know there's other breeds out there that, maybe if you're into grass-fed beef, that might be, more conducive to that, might marble better. I know Wagyu is a huge thing. I know South Pole is kind of gaining a lot of weight on grass finishing beef and how they can, kind of turn their forages into better fat content. But we're going to focus on Angus here. So we have a lot of different systems that we're looking at. I'm going to go into them. On the top left, you can see a silvopasture, a tree system. We're going to talk extensively about that. On the bottom left, you can see what I like to call is the thing that we have that other farmers probably don't because of the expense of them, is a shade haven. It's a mobile shade structure. So I can move that every day. It's helping to build our soil health, because as it gets hot, the cows go underneath it. They chew their cud, they loaf, they poop, they pee, they stamp all that down into the ground. And then the next day we just pick it up and move it. We can fit about 30 animals underneath there pretty comfortably. Any more than that, we probably would need another one, as they stamp out the forage too much. So we learned that lesson hard, and we're coming back after we're moving it, and we're reseeding and putting hay mulch down to keep our pastures going. And then the big picture on the right is a warm season forage. So what we call native warm season grasses. So it's another thing that we incorporated into our rotation at different times of year. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I just like the picture where you can barely see the top of the cows' backs, because that's just beautiful to me. So this is our setup. This side over here is our silvopasture here, and this is mostly our cold season grasses. So our fescues, our clovers, our orchard grass, our timothy, our bluegrass, and whatever else we can find in between. So they're usually optimized at a different time of year to be better forage for the cows, usually in the early spring, the late fall, and even into winter. This small field over here is our native warm season grasses. It's about 20 acres. All said and done, the number of paddocks that we're running, you can see I've numbered them out, is 22. So we have 22 different scenarios that we can move the cattle through. We use a mix of permanent fences and reels in temporary fences and step-in posts. So our permanent fences will run all the way down through here to the middle of this field and here, and then we're breaking these up, these 4 paddocks on either side with temporary fence. Same here. We have 1, 2, and 3, and then all of these are all done with temporary fence. So silvopasture is one of the things that we started a long time ago here at Catawba. I think it was before I even was here. They planted the trees. We did a lot of work to kind of bring them back. When I first got here, they were completely under grass cover. We couldn't find them. So we went out and started bush hogging, taking the grass back from them, doing some weed management things, and we finally gotten them up to the point where we can graze the cattle in them. But one of the main things about silvopasture to understand is that there was a drawdown study done maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was 100 things that we can do right now to kind of slow the effects of climate change. And silvopastures was number 9. And I think in the top 10, 3 or 4 things were related to our food system, which is very interesting. But by grazing the cattle in the trees, research suggests that, you know, any methane emissions that they are letting off are offset and recaptured by the tree and then stored in the tree and underground. And so then it's just creating like a big mass of carbon that's trapped right there. Other advantages of the shade that the trees provide: number one, on the forage, especially with the cold season grasses, with the shade of the grass, it's causing it to grow a little slower, but it's also building up a lot more sugars and proteins in that grass that allows for a healthier forage. And then shade, of course, with the black cows, as we saw in the shade structure, is eliminating the heat stress that they do. And especially with our grass, Kentucky Fescue 131, if you're not familiar, I guarantee you've seen it because it's about everywhere that we're around. It has an endophyte poisoning in the seed head. So if it's grazed and the cows are eating the seeds, they get this poisoning, and it raises their internal body temperature to where they feel like they're hot and they stress out. So you see them, like if you're driving down the road, you'll see them like wading out into ponds or just laying in a mud hole or something like that. And that's probably what it's due to. In pregnant heifers, it can actually lead to abortion if the toxicity reaches a high enough level. So the shade really eliminates the stress. Since our goal is weight gain, how much weight can we put on, how much fat can we cure, then decreasing stress is one of the main things that we focus on. The silvopasture does a good job of that. And I'll show you some of the pictures here. Some of the trees are not quite ideal size for the beef, but some of them are. It's a really diverse mix of trees. You know, on the left here, we have these pitch lobs, which is a cross between a pitch pine and a loblolly. Very fast growing, work really well. And then you can see next to the one on the right, there's like a little oak tree there. Of course, the oak is a very slow growing tree, so it's not going to go as fast. And so you can see some of the damage that they do. Here's some black locust on the right that they're sitting under here, enjoying a nice mud hole. They're self-pruning the trees, so we don't have to prune the trees, so they grow up really nice and straight in an open field scenario. The other thing is warm native season grasses. We're regenerating that land using old Native American techniques of prescribed burn. So it uses us burning a field of warm native season grasses, of switchgrass, big blue stem, and Indian grass. And then it comes up in the spring with this nice forage. So we're able to use these pastures when the endophyte poisoning and like the cold season grasses are kind of losing their nutrition, ready to regenerate for the spring. We put them on the warm native season grasses, which are drought tolerant and are coming into their best during the hot summer months. We also are doing some winter grazing. So we're stockpiling forage for the winter with the cold season grasses. We take the cows off for a month. Around October, we allow those grasses to regenerate, and then we use a single line here and moving it once a day to allow the cows to eat. Instead of feeding hay, we're able to feed a strip. It's about 25 by 200 or something like that, and that's usually enough. So last year we didn't feed hay. We strip grazed up until April the 7th or something. We fed hay for about 2 weeks, and then the grasses were back and we were back into the grazing system. I show this picture just because you can do it on a very small scale. This is my dairy goats at my farm at home. You can see the line here where I've been strip grazing them and using the forage for that. So this is, in the end, this is what we get. You know, we're looking at some really nice marbled ribeye steaks here, and then we get a lot of manure from the hay we do feed, which then goes back onto the fields, either in hay or vegetable production, depending on what our majority of our needs are at that time. But I like to show this picture to wrap up. We have a bird group, the Roanoke Bird Association, bird watchers. They work with us here at the Catawba Sustainability Center. And just since we had introduced the cattle, the bird population has really gone crazy, which is a great indicator that we're doing something right. So we've been able to observe 105 different species, and this, you can look this up on eBird. A lot of those species are related to the way we were managing the grass, like barn swallows and cowbirds and some of the warblers and meadowlarks. Those are all associated to how we are managing the grass with the cattle, and we've seen like a very big increase in those species since we started. So I think I'm probably over time, but I'm happy to answer any questions. So thank you guys.
Yeah, just Just right, Adam. I'm gonna bring everybody on our panel into the spotlight. But yeah, let me find everybody real quick because my screen changed a little bit when you stop sharing. So here we go. We're gonna get everybody here. Yeah. So thank you both for sharing. I'm just always struck by how not only are you all producing really nutrient dense and delicious food that you're sharing with our community, that you hold so much ecological knowledge. And so you're not only producing food for the community, but food for the land. And that really shows up in so many places relationally. So thank you all so much for the work that you do. And we're going to move into a couple questions that Maureen and I are going to get us started off with. And then we'll open it up for anyone in the audience today to share your questions for Adam, Anna, and Brent. And so invite you, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat and get them queued up for when we have the time to address them. But we'll start out asking you all, what key lessons have you learned about regenerative food production? So maybe starting with Anna and Brent and then heading on over to Adam, and then Maureen's got our next question for us.
All right. Are we off mute?
Yeah.
Okay. I think, I took down some notes about the question specifically and tried to sort of think about it in a big picture standpoint. And really the key lessons that I think we've learned about regenerative food production and the whole aspect of, promoting soil health and ecological balance and all that is that it's really a lot more common sense than we tend to believe. We all, those of us that, have been through K through 12 and then, further education have been taught that a lot of times things are really intricate and involved, and with regenerative practices and things, it's really more common sense if you know the systems, if you understand how the systems work. And I'm talking specifically about the farming and production, aspect, but that also extends into marketing and networking and, collaborating with other growers too. So I just feel like it's a lot simpler than sometimes we realize if we just slow down and think about how the natural systems function and try to mimic that as much as possible, then things tend to fall in place.
Yeah. Thanks, Brent. How about you, Anna? Do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I do. And I told Brent I was going to bring this up because this is my new thing I've been focusing on and thinking a lot about after attending the VABF conference a couple weeks ago and getting energized about it, and talking to the other producers that are in our network, our Edible Goose Creek network of producers. And I think something that keeps coming up when we talk about resilient and sustainable and regenerative agriculture, is a little bit about what you said, Katie, and the fact that these farmers and these producers hold all of this ecological knowledge and all of this knowledge about growing things and tending things. And the farmers are a big resource that are being overlooked, I think, because we are asking so much of these producers. We're asking for these products, year round at certain, weekly at the farmers market, distributed this way. And farmer burnout is a really big thing that's not talked about a lot, but I think needs to be put in the spotlight more. And that's that we need to look for ways to collaborate with other producers to say, okay, I'm going to the week, it's burning me out, I don't want to do this anymore. Let's look for ways to cut down on that burnout so that these people want to keep doing this work, want to keep producing this food. And I think by strengthening the collaborations between each of us and really looking at what we can all bring to the table as producers, as consumers, where, what can we do to help the farmer create this experience that's going to want to keep them farming for years to come, and present a good model for future farmers coming up, and not looking at the type of farming we're doing and thinking you have to run yourself ragged in order to produce a farm and make that farm stay afloat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's a huge issue in the farming community. So I appreciate you sharing some ideas around how you all have lived into creating a system that works for you. Adam, how about you?
A lot of what, echo a lot of what Brent and Anna said. I think there's like an example I like to give is, I'm out here in rural Catawba. I live in rural Craig County, and the Catawba Sustainability Center is like right between two roads that are very heavily trafficked. And so I see a lot of people like, oh, you run that Catawba farm. And other farmers tell me, I could never do what you do. I can't stretch those reels. I don't know where to start. Like you're out there moving cattle every 3 days, every day, whatever, that would just never work for me. And I'm just like, well, you just have to try. It's like taking the first step. Like, yeah, maybe our system is like a little too intense. And I've said this at like Farm Bureau talks I've given. Yeah, but I have a job, I have a farm. I don't move my goats every day like I move the cattle at Catawba, but I try to do something. If it's moving once a week, if it's moving once every 2 weeks, if it's dividing my huge pasture just into two to allow them to eat one for a month and one for the other, doing that is beneficial. You're going to see better results from your stock. You're going to see your land regenerate better. You're going to see your forages produce better, and you're going to see healthier overall animals in your cattle or goats or sheep or whatever it is. So it's just like, there's a lot of anxiety, I think, in taking the first step and like getting beyond, like, this is how I've always done it. This is how my granddaddy did it. But we scientifically proven, we know there are better ways to manage the landscape with, like in my case, with these animals. And just encouraging people to just take a small step, just try a little bit. And then once you do that and you start noticing the differences, it's addictive. You're just going to keep moving forward and moving forward.
Thank you all so much. Yeah,
Thank
Mo, take us on to what's next.
Yeah, so we have a lot of questions coming in through the chat, and we only have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and start and move from moderated to questions from the audience. So the first is from Jerry. Just wondering about the role of cooperative extension in support or not of introducing new practices. And I know that neither of y'all, well, yeah, I guess you've worked in close collaboration. If not, Adam, I'm not sure if you're positioned specifically through VCE, but feel free to speak to that from your position in the food system.
Yeah, so the Catawba Sustainability Center does have a rich partnership with Virginia Cooperative Extension. I field a lot of extension questions from producers. Probably they've contacted the agent. The agent's like maybe wasn't into it so much, and they referred them to me. And all I would say is Cooperative Extension is an amazing organization. I think it depends on where you are, what county you're in, what your extension agent is like. Everyone is different in each county in Virginia. The best thing I can say is, like, if you really, want to know something from your extension agent, really press them that this is how I'm going to do things. I'm not, taking a conventional route that is not in my ethos, it does not fit my ethical standards, and making that known and pressing them for the information. But also, I think most of the regenerative farmers I interact with, are learning from other farmers. They're learning from Brent, and they're learning from Anna, and they're learning from VABF. And, there's so many other avenues for learning about agricultural systems than Virginia Cooperative Extension. Yes, it's a great resource. Please use it, especially soil testing. There's no better thing in the state that you can do through them. But there's lots of other avenues than VCE for what you want to do.
And just want to put in a quick little plug. I help coordinate the Virginia Beginning Farmer and Rancher Coalition, and we have a series called Taste of Farming, and there's over 20 videos now by different Virginia Cooperative Extension agents and VSU Small Farm Outreach Program assistants on different farming topics, and they're really brief, but that's a good way to find out about the different agents, and they've made it really clear that even if they're not in your county, they can help you, especially if they specialize in something that you need help with. So I'm going to put a link in the chat for that and pass it on to Anna and Brent if y'all had anything to add there.
Yeah, just real quick to note that, one of the major changes I've seen in the last 6+ years working really closely with Virginia Association for Biological Farming is, the collaboration between organizations like VABF and the Farmers Market Association and some of the other nonprofit organizations that are not affiliated with Virginia Tech or Extension are collaborating more than they ever have in the past. Virginia State University and the Small Farm Outreach Program and VCE, Extension statewide. There's a program now through the Soil Health Coalition, and Mary Sketch Bryant just got a grant within the last year to basically train folks like extension agents and conservation specialists that are working in the field with farmers on regenerative practices and soil health practices. So the movement is growing in that direction. There are so many more. That's one of the things that in my notes, one of the bright lights, I think, in this whole idea of regenerative and regional food movements like we're in, is that the tent's getting bigger and bigger all the time. And there's a lot of institutional knowledge and practical on the ground knowledge in the extension agencies all across the Commonwealth. So the fact that they're willing to learn some new practices, as Adam said, that a lot of us farmers are just learning on our own, is really a good sign, in my opinion. So.
Great, thank you both. Mo, I'm thinking I'll go to a specific question to Bramble Hollow and then to Singing Spring. Adam, I'll get you teed up here. We're gonna go to you next about wondering how similar your regenerative practices work from Singing Spring Farms on your farm to the CSC. But I'll pose a question here to Anna and Brent. Catherine would like to know more about the vision of Bramble Hollow Farm Kitchen.
You want to take that?
Oh, yes. I'd love to talk about the kitchen. Brent and I were fortunate enough back in 2020 to use some grant funding to put towards the construction of a commercial kitchen building that you saw in one of the slides that we had earlier. This is a space that we are still working on developing to be able to host other small local farms who have a product that they want to value add to. And what that means, value added means taking your product, for example, tomatoes, and value adding it. So instead of just taking a tomato to your customer, you take the tomato and you make it into sauce or ketchup or another product. That's adding some value to the product. And depending on what you are value adding your product, you might have to have that processed in a commercially inspected kitchen. We're lucky here in the area to have a commercially inspected kitchen that is for use through LEAP, and it can be rented for people to do just that, take their farm products or other products and make a value added product out of it. So what we want to do here is very similar to what LEAP has done, and just create a small space for these micro producers, like our collaborators with Edible Goose Creek, but also other local growers, where they can come and do small quantities of value adding. We're putting some additional grant funding into some other appliances that will help farms being able to dehydrate their product for longer for use. We're putting in a tilt kettle to help us take some of our farms' byproducts, the backbones and the feet of some of the chickens, along with some of Wingstem Farms medicinal mushrooms, along with some of Goose Creek Gardens herbs. Put those together. We're going to be making chicken broth, and that's a value-added product that we can then sell through our avenues with Edible Goose Creek and elsewhere. So the kitchen space is in the process of being inspected. Once we are inspected and get our stamp of approval, then we will be able to offer the space up to other producers, as well as to use it here to produce those products from our farm.
Hey, thanks so much. And Adam, if you're up for sharing a little bit about the differences on your farm and Catawba with the same practices.
Yeah, so my farm is significantly smaller than Catawba. It's about a tenth of the size. So we have 33 acres, and we pretty much just run a nice diversified homestead. But yeah, dairy goats are like are probably our main thing. So when you run a dairy, that really gives you more options when you also are doing vegetables and crops or whatever. So a lot of the regenerative stuff we do is, we take the manure and hay from the dairy because they're all, we're milking them inside. We're, feeding kids, separating kids. So all that manure and stuff, we actually use biochar. We put down in the barn to absorb all the ammonia and stuff like that. The animals stomp it down into a powder that gets cleaned out, composted. A lot of times I'll just cook it for a season under silage tarps on our vegetable gardens. So we're kind of producing all of our own inputs for the vegetables that we're growing. And then we're using pastured poultry. We're really big into orchards. We got kind of interested in apple and pear trees a few years back. And so we went on a scavenge we collected scion wood from our valley to try to, save some of the old apple varieties and pear varieties that were there in the valley. And so in order to feed those trees, we run pastured chickens in between the trees. And so we're trying to build the soil health for the trees. And so everything we do is we do a full diet CSA. Dairy, eggs, meat, and vegetables. Then we have 3 pickups, but it's all very small scale. We only have about 15 to 20 members, depending on how great we feel. But my wife and I both work full time, so we try to just make it work the best we can. And we're mostly interested in feeding our family healthy food. So that's where a lot of it goes.
That's awesome. I know a few folks are going to need to hop off right at 3, but did y'all have like maybe 5-10 minutes to stick on a little bit longer so we could answer 2 more questions? It's okay if you need to hop off.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And for anybody who needs to leave, just wanted to share a couple announcements. If you liked this session, there are 3 others in the series that have already happened, but the recordings are available on the Center for Food Systems and Community Transformation's website. I put the link in the chat. And also we'd love to hear your feedback about the session. There's a 1 to 2 minute survey we put in the chat too. So just wanted to share those quick updates. And Mo, do you want to close us out with the last 2 questions, or got any that you think are coming to
so Laura Henry Stone was hoping to ask her question personally. I don't know if we can unmute.
Yeah, Laura, go ahead and try to unmute. I changed the setting so we can give it a try.
Okay.
Let's see if Laura is still here.
Can you all hear me? I
Yeah.
can't turn my video on, I guess. Okay, thanks for letting me do this. I have a hard time being concise in the chat box. Hey folks, I've met a few of you in the past. Brent in particular, I wanted to connect with you because my question I think is mostly for Anna and Brent regarding food shed identity. Right, so I live in Amherst County. I teach at the University of Lynchburg, formerly Lynchburg College, and I'm interested in contributing to building a more resilient, sustainable food system in the Lynchburg area. And I've always imagined that Bedford County is part of the Lynchburg Foodshed. So I'm kind of curious from your all's perspective in terms of how number one, how you, Brent, Anna, how you identify your foodshed identity, if you think of yourselves as part of the Lynchburg Foodshed as well. And number two, if you have a sort of other broader advice for somebody like me and academic based in Lynchburg about how to contribute my work towards building a resilient food shed in the Lynchburg area. Thanks.
Right. Hey, Laura, thanks for the question. Basically, I mean, to answer the first part of the question, I honestly don't. The only real issue that I see with, trying to label ourselves either a part of the Roanoke Foodshed versus the Lynchburg Foodshed is the fact that means that I've normally got to spend more money on gas, driving both directions as opposed to one. We're kind of affiliated in both, as you well know, we've got deep roots with some nonprofit groups like Land and Table in the Lynchburg area. But we also have deep roots with the LEAP folks and several markets in the Roanoke area. So, we need to think in terms of, sort of smaller food sheds, I agree. But, when we're talking about the region, you were just, just over the hill from a whole nother food shed. So I like to think that we're all really kind of one big food shed, which makes it all more imperative for those of us to be able to collaborate in ways that we can really support each other, so we're not having to drive those extra miles in two different directions, literally. That's kind of the way I see that.
Yes, I agree with Brent. When you start talking about local farms, you'll find that sometimes customers are really, really particular about, buying their goods from one farm. For example, while we've been, farming for about 20 years, there have been other farms that have popped up. Some are still in operation, some are not. But my point is that some of our customers are driving past 3 other places that they could get pastured poultry just to come to us. And I think that's because we've made a relationship with the customer and they've become part of our farm family. And so I think, it's up to the customer. If you really want your heritage breed Thanksgiving turkey, you might not find it in the Lynchburg food shed. You might have to drive over to the Roanoke Foodshed to find it. And I think blurring those lines between them is good too, because the more they're blurred, then the more you have your little, like Brent said, kind of micro local food systems. But yeah, I would, if I'm coming to Lynchburg, I'll drive some eggs and chickens that way. And Brent's going to Roanoke, he'll go that way too. So we kind of are, where our farm is personally, is kind of in the middle between Lynchburg and Roanoke. So we kind of do feel the pull both ways.
Right. And Laura, I think just in interest of time, I think your next part of the question was about how folks like in academia like you could get more involved and do that. I'd love to talk with you more about that, because we do have some grant programs that are coming available that we could use some, certainly get into outreach into the university and, into the Lynchburg area and sort of tag team, what this group's been doing in the Roanoke region too. So happy to talk to you about that.
So we only have time for one more question. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip to Jessica's question. Where do you see the biggest area need for collaborations on your farms? And this could go to either of you.
What do you think, Adam?
I mean, there's a lot of room for collaboration with Catawba Sustainability Center. We are collaborating with a lot of like higher education, Virginia Western, Roanoke College, just trying to educate students on the importance of the environmental practices associated with our agriculture model. I think as far as Catawba goes, I mean, we could use more collaboration as in resources. I've been here almost 7 years, and I'm still the only full-time employee doing this farm. So, if the models that we are representing at Catawba are of importance, then I think collaboration needs to be forced upon the university to show that we need more of this. We need to see more. We need to see more models. That it is important. As far as Singing Spring Farm goes, collaboration would be great among other producers to do kind of a bigger CSA where we kind of share the load, kind of like Brent and Anna have it in Goose Creek Valley. I dream of having something like that. There's not a lot of producers that are kind of in the same, direct to consumer, local food kind of stuff around me, but I would love, to work with other people. And it would just make things easier, working on, each other's farms. And there's a big project day to help out, kind of relieve a lot of that burnout that Anna was talking about. And like somebody take turns going to markets, take turns doing deliveries. All right, you're going to market, we'll keep your kids while you go, and just kind of working together like that. I mean, a lot of times I look back, and I think like the agricultural models that I'm representing are things that were abundant in the area, in the early 1900s, late 1800s. Like everyone helped everyone out to get everything in so that everyone survived. And we've kind of moved away from that to this individualistic kind of model, like my land, my farm, I can do it all. But we can't, especially as small farmers. We're not 1,200 acres in the Midwest growing row crops. We're smaller, hilly side, diversified farms. So if we want to build a resilient, food system, in our area, we're going to have to collaborate and work together.
I think one of the biggest, maybe a good final thought. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen, working with a lot of farms over the years, from organic to conventional and everywhere in between, is that a lot of us, even in agriculture, and particularly in sort of the general population, have really lost our connection with, and it's so cliche to say know where your food comes from, but we really lost our connection with, literally where that sustenance comes from, who grows it, what kind of conditions, those farmers are under, pressures and the kind of thing to produce, environmental pressures, market pressures. We've all, as Adam just mentioned, we've all kind of become so, linear in our thought process that we've gotten so far outside of where we actually fit in our local ecosystem, and that requires food production. So just the fact, one of the highlights that I'm seeing now is that younger folks, even older folks that are new to farming, are getting into it. They're learning more about it. They're putting energy and love and time into it. And that in and of itself is growing the awareness about, why this is so important for our communities and to keep farmers on the land. Honestly, that's one of the biggest pluses that I see, is it's allowing people to continue to make a living, even if they still have an off the farm job, at least make somewhat of a living and be a contributor in a society where, a lot of us have forgotten how to do that.
Thanks so much, Brent and Adam, and to everyone for their wonderful questions and for attending this learning exchange today. Katie will send a follow-up with a recording for the session. So if there's anybody that that would benefit from hearing this talk today, feel free to forward that on to them. And in the chat, we have a very quick pulse survey. So if you don't mind just taking a minute or two, just helps us get feedback to help make these sessions better. For the time being, this is the last of our learning exchanges for this series, but stay tuned on the Roanoke Foodshed Network listserv, and feel free to reach out if you're not on the listserv and I can add you. My email's in the chat, but there will be plenty more learning opportunities to come. So anything before we close, Katie?
No, just a huge thanks to Anna, Brent, Adam, for all that you're doing for our communities and the land, and really bringing your perspective and visions for how we might be able to begin making this work for farmers in our food shed. And just want to encourage us all to think of this, as the beginning of the conversations. These have been happening for a long time, but this is a really great launching point for us to really explore how we're going to make our food system work for everybody who's producing and also who's distributing, producing, and eating in our community. So really, really thank you for your grassroots, literally, perspective and all the work and love you share with our community. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.